Listen, listen. Why are you competing with folks that ain't in your league? Let me say this again. Why are you competing with folk that ain't in your league? Why? Let me say it a little bit differently. Stop competing with folk that are not in your league. What do I mean by that? I'm really talking about keeping up with the Joneses. And I'm talking about considering or being receptive to other folk competing with you. Why are you competing with folk that are not in your league? Okay, each of us is individual. We're unique. We're uniquely created. So, why are we competing? For example, if your neighbor has a swimming pool, but you don't, who cares? Really, who cares? They're not in your league. You shouldn't even want them to be in your league. Now, if your leagues just happen to intersect, that's one thing. That's a different story. But generally speaking, you shouldn't even want them to be in your league. Okay? So, they have a swimming pool and you don't. They have 2 kids. You have 1 kid. They may be of a different race compared to yours. You're not in the same league. Why are you trying to compete? Hopefully you're not trying to copy, or you're not trying to emulate. But unfortunately, a lot of us are trying to compete. We want to win against our neighbor. What if your neighbor on the other side doesn't keep up their lawn, but you do? Are you in the same league? What if they have trash? I'm talking about like boxes and stuff that should be discarded. Some mechanical trash, maybe an old rusty wheelbarrow, what have you. What if they have trash in their driveway where it's visible to everyone, but you make sure that you have a clean appearance on yours? Why are you trying to compete with those folk? Where's the competition? Why are we competing with folks that are not in our league? You ever hear LeBron say, well, I'm better than Cooper Flagg, knowing that LeBron is a GOAT, knowing that LeBron's got about 22 years in, all-time leading scorer, etc., etc. Cooper Flagg was a high school phenom. Now he's a college basketball player. Would you ever hear LeBron say, I'm better than Cooper? No, you wouldn't. Because they're not in the same league. Conversely, would you ever hear Cooper Flagg as a college player, even with all the social media following that he has, even with his apparent greatness at that level, you never heard Cooper say, I'm as good as LeBron, or I'm better than LeBron. He's not trying to compete with LeBron. Because guess what? They're in different leagues. One is professional at the highest level. The other one is college at a different level. They're not in the same league. And by that same token, you never hear a professional football player trying to compete with a professional basketball player. You never hear Justin Jefferson. He's a receiver, like maybe the number one receiver in the NFL. You never hear him compare himself to Anthony Edwards. They're both Minnesota players. Justin Jefferson, he plays for the Minnesota Vikings, the football Vikings. Anthony Edwards plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves, the NBA Timberwolves. Both of them are great. One is great at football, maybe the face of the league for the future, maybe the number one receiver in the whole league. The other one is great at basketball. They're touting him as being the next face of the NBA. But you never hear Justin Jefferson say, I'm better than Anthony Edwards. Or Anthony Edwards saying, man, please, Justin Jefferson couldn't hold my jock. I would destroy that dude. You never hear it. Why? Because they're in different leagues. One of them is in an NFL football league. The other one is in NBA basketball league. They're in different leagues. They don't compete. They don't try to compete. So why do we regular folk, us commoners, try to compete? Us civilians will say. Why do us civilians try to compete with folks that are not in our league? We should develop our own goals, our own aspirations. We can use folks as motivation, but not as competition. There is no competition. We have our own life circumstances. We have our own backgrounds, our own issues. Some of these people that you're trying to compete with financially, they've been set up for success. They've had some generational advantages. They may have had stuff passed on to them. They may have had working parents that were able to do certain things for them. You may be coming from more stressful, more lean circumstances. They may have come from a 2-parent household. You may have come from a 1-parent household. That doesn't mean that you're not going to experience certain success, certain joys in life, but you're not competing with them. Now, depending upon where they are emotionally, they might compete with you. They may feel threatened by you, but you're not competing with them. Okay? So let's keep that in mind. Now, on the outside, you may think that the playing field is even. You may live in the same neighborhood. You may work at the same job, potentially, maybe work at the same company. So on the outside, it may look like the playing field is even. But once you go inside your house, once you close those doors, the variables are vastly different. Some of them may be the same, but the variables are vastly different. They may be struggling with certain things that you're not struggling with, and vice versa. They may have certain drains on them socially, emotionally, financially that you don't have. You may be supporting family. You may be supporting spouses, parents, whether it be financial support, whether it be emotional support, it might even be a caregiver support. You have those things on your plate that they don't have on their plate. If you have 2 different plates, that means that you're in different leagues. So where's the competition? Answer, there is no competition. A buddy of mine has a corporate pension. He has a military pension, and he'll be coming up on Social Security shortly. He's a referee friend of mine, so that means he's out there hustling, collecting up these little game fees. Some of them are decent, but he's collecting up these fees. In season and off season, he's hustling hard. And some people, they critique his refereeing skills. And some people consider him not to be a top tier or less than a top tier referee. But meanwhile, he's hustling hard. He's scraping up the money. He's making more money in his side hustle than those referees that think that they are all that. But he's making more money. So who's really getting ahead? My point is that you have referees that have high skill levels that feel like they're competing with him. But they're not, because they're not in the same league. The buddy of mine, he put 2 kids through college. They're off independent. They have their own careers. He worked many, many years in corporate America. He's probably got in excess of $1 million in assets or net worth. So how would he be competing with someone, a fellow referee, for instance, that may have 3 or 4 jobs? A fellow referee that may have his day job. He has an evening job at the hotel. He does some gig work with the Uber, and he does refereeing all through the year. So how's he competing with the gentleman that put children through college, worked several decades in corporate America, a couple of decades in the military, and is essentially going to be financially set? How are they competing? They're not in the same league. Not at all. Now, another example is, I know a guy who taught for many years, full-time, quote-unquote overtime. Nowadays, he only goes in to the building a few hours a day, just a few hours. He's in a support role for a few hours a day. Yet, when he's in that building, for some reason, there's other teachers that feel like they're competing with him. They feel like they're competing with him as far as knowledge. They feel like they're competing as far as wisdom. And they're competing to be noticed. That gentleman that goes in 3 hours, he goes in quietly, takes care of business, supports those students quietly, impacts those students quietly, and then goes on about his business. The reason why he can exist on just doing a few hours a day is because he's put in the work over the years. He's made some good choices. He's made some mistakes. He's learned from his mistakes. And he's been able to obtain certain financial independence. And so he can get away with 3 hours a day and still support his family, still support his lifestyle, still put a kid through college. So there's no competition. It's different leagues. And so once we realize that there's really no competition, it's really just us and our family, those people that support you. Once we realize there's really no competition, once we realize that everybody is in their own league, whether they overlap or not, everybody has their own league. And once we realize there's no competition, then we can go about the business. We can go about the business of being who God intended us to be. We can go about the business of focusing on our own success and not looking at the person next to us, not looking at the neighbor next door, not looking at the colleague on the basketball court next to us, not looking at the gentleman that he only shows up for a few hours. We can just focus on ourselves. All right? But that's just my opinion, based on what I've seen and experienced. Your goal is to be the best that you can be. Be what God intended you to be. Find out what your destiny is and to chase it and be the best you can along the way. Some people have easier paths than others. Sometimes it looks like it's easier, but it's not. Long story short, there ain't no competition. Let's cut it out. There ain't no competition. I don't care how expensive your shoes are. I don't care how much money you spent on your outfit. I really don't care what kind of car you drive. No one cares, really. For a moment, they might look at it. For a moment, they might have some jealousy. But long term, they don't care. They don't care what kind of house you live in. No one cares. So in the grand scheme, ain't no competition. Like some people will say, oh, you're only competing with yourself. There ain't no competition. Just fulfill your destiny. Be the best that you can be for yourself, for your family. Be what God wants you to be. But that's my opinion. Let me know what you think. Please like, please share, and leave some comments. But no complaints.